I wanted to talk first, Ben, about workers' comp fraud and why it's important to talk about workers' comp fraud right now. I'm starting out with an article that I just thought was, hysterical. The woman, this is it's titled "Target Employee Staged Accident to Collect Workers' Comp, but Scheme Was Caught on Video," and it was on NewJersey.com, NJ.com. And in it, the woman claimed the box she was carrying hit the edge of a shelf, and boxes fell off the shelves and struck her on the head, neck, and back, and even caused her to vomit. But she forgot that there were cameras rolling in the storeroom.
Man, that would
really so stink, wouldn't it?
I guess that's why she doesn't get away with it. There's too many dumb criminals out there. I guess that's the safety that we have.
Isn't that the truth? In her case, boy, she thought she had it wrapped too, because she even loosened up the shelf and positioned all the boxes properly, and then had this spectacular, dramatic, quote-unquote, accident. And then she even positioned herself under the boxes, pulled a shopping cart containing additional items onto herself.
It was a big catastrophe.
Oh, just tremendous. So then another employee comes running to help her. The moment that he leaves, she gets up and gets a soda and crackers, comes back and throws up all over everything to try to show that she had head injuries. It was just one huge drama scene. And she must have been terribly disappointed when she filed for workers' comp and ended up with felony charges because they could prove the whole thing was faked. So it says here, charge against Colin, and her last name is Colin, poor girl, carries a possible penalty of up to 10 years in prison upon conviction. So of course, everybody we talk about is presumed innocent legally, until they are proven to be guilty. But I think we all know that once you're caught on tape, it's kind of indicative that there's a problem. So,
well, some of you had mentioned to me off show was how maybe this is Target. It's a big warehouse. Mm-hmm. They have a bigger budget to protect against these. But how can a small business owner actually
protect
fight?
Themselves?
It's pretty hard to fight fraud cases as a small business owner. It
is, especially when you're dealing with two things. One is Target was lucky. They had cameras in the back room, so they were able to see what she had been doing. But not all businesses are going to always be able to watch their employees 24/7 and prove that a slip and fall was faked. However, when you're a smaller employer, it's very likely that you may end up with a policy where, and I've heard this so many times, I've heard so many business owners tell me that they would have loved to have fought a workers' comp claim. They knew it was fraudulent, but the workers' comp carrier who was underwriting the claim would not prosecute, would not investigate. I've even had clients who said, oh my gosh, I even took pictures of this person. They're supposed to have a bad back and they were hanging from a trapeze, But the companies are not willing to investigate. And so they'd rather pay it out, close the case, and then pass all the extra costs onto the employer, which only increases their workers' comp rate, makes them look negligent when it hasn't been their fault at all. So to me, the best solution is employee leasing, because with employee leasing, which happens to be my specialty, with employee leasing, you end up with a much larger company with a much bigger bang for the buck. They are going to fight those claims because it actually impacts them. If a claim is fraudulent and it's settled, they want to make sure these people pay for it. Of course, if they're genuinely injured, they're not going to put them through the ringer. But the larger companies, any employee leasing companies, also known as PEOs, which stands for Professional Employer Organization, they tend to want to examine every claim very carefully. And there are genuine claims, but they catch the ones that aren't. It's definitely in their best interest to do so. So for a small businessman, in my opinion, and what I did when I had a couple small businesses is use employee leasing, because then you got the big boys in your backyard.
And that's one of the things they offer you is claims. They're going to help you fight claims. Yes. Or fight fraud.
They help administer the claims. Employee leasing, a lot of people get it mixed up with staffing. It's not, but it's funny. It's still one of those things that people think, oh, well, I don't need to hire a temp. Well, it's not about temps. Employee leasing is like a big umbrella company where a lot of little companies cluster under, and you share your employees with the big company. And the big company at that point has access to better rates and better opportunities because they're representing a large pool of employers and employees. So at that point, their workers' comp rates might be better. They're able to offer health insurance benefits that a small employer may not be able to get on their own. They have access to benefits and other things like that. And of course, they take on the administration of the claim, and they also do all the taxes. So employers don't have to worry about paying out the Social Security tax, and did I turn in my quarterlies, and how did I report my taxes? Oh, did I pay the latest state unemployment rate? What is the latest state unemployment rate? All of that is taken care of.
Oh, it sounds great.
Yeah, I sell it because I'm passionate about it, because I really like it, and I've used it myself.
Well, we do a lot of fraud cases, and we've talked already about 3 or 4 in here, so it happens a lot, and even moreover, there's more accidents that are happening, and there's paperwork behind every accident. So even if it wasn't a fraud case, there's still claim cases, and what I've heard is that one big tip that any business owner can have is that the sooner the faster they file a claim, the sooner they jump on it.
Definitely. Definitely. Yeah, you don't want to let any time go by. And that's true with the employee leasing companies. If you're a client and you're with an employee leasing company, you need to let them know the moment that there's a workers' comp accident, even if it's a small one, because you don't want to have an employee have a little cut on their finger and 10 days later have it turn gangrenous or something. You want to be ahead of that. Most of the time, you're not going to have a problem, but you still want to have that reported because it covers you. So, which leads us to while we're talking about employees exploiting the system, I guess the next thing is why? Why are we seeing so many? To me, it feels like there's a rise in workers' comp fraud. And I can't say there is, because I never like to say anything definitively unless I have statistics. I don't have statistics on it, but I see increases on that lately in the papers and online. And I think it's the economy, just like we're seeing more homes being broken into, more in my neighborhood, which used to be considered to be a good neighborhood. It's not like behind gates or anything, but it was a good neighborhood. We've had so many cars broken into lately. We've had houses broken into lately, things that I've lived there for 8 years and have never seen. And it's this economy. And this economy tends to make people desperate. And when people are desperate, they often do desperate things that are not always legal. And workers' comp fraud would be one of those. It's a great way to collect, especially if you think maybe you're going to get fired, or maybe you want to leave the employer and it's looming. And you think, you know what, I really don't like this guy. I want out. I'll have a slip and fall. I'll make the claim and I get to stay home for free. And yeah, his rates go up too. Ha ha, So
is it that they're trying to get workers' comp fraud, or are they trying to file a lawsuit against them? Or
it can be both. It can be all. It really does vary. But even if some people don't realize that with workers' comp, you lose the right to sue if you claim workers' comp, because workers' comp covers you. Therefore, it is considered to be the answer, and it's a substitute for a lawsuit. So, but people don't always realize that, And I myself had a slip and fall a couple months ago outside of the U.S. Post Office, and I really creamed myself. I had scabs on my knees for weeks and bruises, and I didn't file a claim. Maybe I should have, but to me, it was not something about getting money out of the situation. But if it had been somebody looking for an opportunity, somebody who needed the money, all they had to do is exaggerate it and make it even worse than it was. Which brings me to why our rates are going up. We're seeing fraud go up. We're seeing rates go up. And Florida workers' comp rates are going up 8.9% this year, after we had a 7.8% increase in 2011. So the rates continue to rise, partly because I believe the economy is hurting, and we're dealing with maybe a stronger chance of people who normally would have, maybe tripped over a cord in the office and not thought anything of it. But now that could become a lawsuit, or in this case, a workers' comp claim. But it's something to think about. So we are seeing an increase in workers' comp rates, which again, not to overemphasize employee leasing, but again, that's another reason to consider employee leasing, because if you're a small company, you may have to settle for whatever the standard rates are. But if you go with employee leasing, there are a lot of times that the employee leasing companies, their rates are going to be a little bit better, again, because you're dealing with buying power. You're dealing with companies that can afford to cut you a break, where you wouldn't get it with a standard carrier. So,
what kind of size businesses are they trying to target? What's considered a small business?
Well, it depends from one employee leasing company to another. Some of them are happy to have even 1 or 2 employees. Some demand a minimum payroll of around $52,000 for all your employees. the size really varies, and it depends on what the companies are looking for. Some companies say, hey, we don't want anything to do with roofers. Some companies say roofers are welcome, but we need this out of them. It depends on what they're targeting. And there are all types of companies out there for everything from the white collar jobs to the gray collar to the blue collar. So there's a lot of opportunities out there if they're interested in employee leasing.
Great.
So yeah, in fact, they can always look into it with our company as well. So we would always recommend that they try calling Business First, and our number is 866-826-1340. I'm sorry, that is actually the Tantalk Studios. Forgive me, it is 800-329-2040. But, of course, you can also call and talk to us here at the Business Edge at 866-826-1340. Again, Enterprise Insurance Group is 800-329-2040 for a no-cost review, which, I'm doing my own ads on the air now, which wasn't intended, but if I'm talking about it and you're listening and you need workers' comp,